Tonight, Australia farewelled Queen Elizabeth II as CHOGM protests were held at Forest Place. Hong Kong's High Court has refused to endorse government declaration to refuse residency application for domestic helpers. Thanks for joining us.
Also tonight, the Court of Final Appeal has ended Mr Chan's long legal fight over the multi-billion-dollar estate of the late Nina Wang. And Libya celebrates the death of feared leader Murmar Gadaffi.
Good evening. The Queen's historic visit to Perth has ended on Saturday as Australia farewelled Queen Elizabeth with a big Aussie barbecue at the Esplanade in the city. Hundreds of Australians were trying to get a glimpse of her as it might be the Queen's last visit to Australia. Tight security arrangements were enforced in the city to avoid possible terrorist attacks and disruption from the protesters. Perth City has never been so crowded before, with the Esplanade and Langley Park packed full of people trying to get a glimpse of the royal couple. The Queen has made a speech on the stage saying thank you to everyone who participated.
It has been a great pleasure for Prince Philip and me to be back in Western Australia. We have enjoyed this visit immensely and thank all those who have come out to welcome us. We have been overwhelmed by your kindness and support.
As they departed, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh waved goodbye to all the crowds along Riverside Drive. Everyone was thrilled to see them both. She later boarded the plane at the Perth International Airport at around 12:30 in the afternoon, with people looking on from the fence. The WA Premier Colin Barnett was also at the tarmac to witness the Queen's departure. Mr Barnett hopes that she will come to Australia again.
My impression was that Her Majesty very much enjoyed the visit, and I think she was thrilled at the massive crowd that turned out, and to see all those flags waving. And it was a beautiful Western Australian Perth morning, big blue sky. It was a great setting, and I think that's a very special moment in the state's history.
Ivan Leung, DHK News.
Meanwhile, during the Queen's visit to Perth to commence CHOGM, protests were held at Forest Place in the city, with different groups rallying for their individual concerns, especially on controversial same-sex marriage and uranium mining. The demonstration was generally peaceful, but some protesters did decide to stay in the square after the rally to continue their solidarity of Occupy Perth. Our reporter Blake Curtis was there.
They came by the hundreds. Forest Place looked unrecognisable with protesters taking over.
From Aboriginal rights to banning uranium mining, hundreds of protesters turned out to Forest Place in the city today to express their views under the watchful eye of the police.
The rally kicked off at 10 o'clock this morning with different ethnic groups voicing their concerns over human rights issues such as same-sex marriage, war crimes in Sri Lanka, Malaysian democracy and Aboriginal land rights. The groups took turns to the public address stage and voiced their slogans with the participating crowd as curious bystanders looked on. Some of Rwandan genocide victims spoke to DHK News. The reason to protest at CHOGM, they say, is to hope to raise awareness of genocide and hope the world leaders can act on the issue. They also believe that the genocide history is still obstructing the country from moving forward. Human rights activist and lawyer Jerry Georgiatos has attended the protest Friday morning, stating that this protest is an attempt to tell Commonwealth leaders that human rights problems still exist in Australia.
Much has been said about Sri Lanka and some African nations about their human rights abuses. However, Australia's maltreatment of Aboriginal peoples is unheralded to the extent that it should be. Australia has imprisoned children, Indonesian children, in our jails. Some of them called me today distressed. And we have what we need to do to put a commission together, inquiry, to try and remedy all these things.
At around 11:30, the Social Alliance activists led the protest around the streets of the CBD, but later they stopped at the police barricade at the intersection of Hay and William Street. The protesters then sat down at the intersection for more than 30 minutes, shouting slogans against corporate greed and demand marriage equality. The protesters arrived back at the Forest Place by 1 o'clock, and some protesters have decided to stay overnight to continue the Occupy Perth protest. Blake Curtis, DHK News.
Industrial actions has granted Qantas flights worldwide and around the nation. Passengers becomes the clear loser of the strike as the Transport Workers Union, the Australian and Pilots Association and the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineer Associations are disputed over pay and conditions with Qantas. Travellers are scrambling to other airlines, including Jetstar and Virgin, to continue on with their travel plans. Qantas has sent out letters to travellers who are affected, which apologise for the inconvenience caused. We have more world news later in Bulletin. Back to Hong Kong now. The High Court has refused to endorse a government decision to temporarily suspend the processing of applications by overseas mates for permanent residency until the conclusion of its appeal against an earlier ruling. Mr. Justice Lam says it would not be proper for the court to intervene in any way, as that would be amount to prejudging the issues. This effectively means domestic helpers can take legal action against the governments for refusing them the right to apply for permanent residency. Last month, the same judge ruled it was unconstitutional to block all mates from making such applications if they have lived in Hong Kong for at least 7 years.
Definitely, we are quite happy with the ruling, and we hope that the government will, stop its scaremongering statements and should lead or should pave the way for leading the Hong Kong people in a more harmonious relationship with the foreign domestic workers in Hong Kong.
The Court of Final Appeal has explained further reasons of why it decided not to hear Tony Chan's appeal over the multi-billion-dollar estate of the late China Chem tycoon Nina Wang. The decision has ended Mr. Chan's long legal fight to own the fortune, worth between 50 to 60 billion Hong Kong dollars.
The Court of Final Appeal has rejected the opportunity for feng shui practitioner Tony Chan to fight for his entitlement to former China Chem chairwoman Nina Wang's fortune. Ms. Wang passed away in 2007 and left behind an estate worth an estimated US $13 billion. It became the subject of a bitter feud between 51-year-old Mr. Chan, who claimed she was his lover, and the China Chem Charitable Foundation controlled by her family.
The China Chem Charitable Foundation is very pleased with the result. The application for leave has now been refused, so the appeal has now ended, and the foundation will proceed with its charitable work right away. Okay, thank you.
The appeal court had already denied his request to take the case to Hong Kong's top court. Both the Court of First Instance and Appeals ruled that Mr. Chan produced a forged will to support his claim to the late tycoon's estate. Mr. Chan denies forgery charges laid against him in May. The Court of Final Appeal will give its reasoning for rejecting the application at a later date. Johanna, Lettenmaier, DHK News.
Last week, Libya broke out in wild celebrations as the nation learns their most feared leader Murmar Gadaffi is no longer alive. But the way Gadaffi was captured and subsequently killed has led to widespread condemnation from human rights groups. Our reporter Shibs has went to discover the public opinion and summarize Gaddafi's dramatic life as an iron fist of Libya.
Under Gaddafi's rule, Libya was a strong supporter of militant organizations that held anti-Western sympathies, funding and supporting various terrorist activities, including the Lockout bombing in 1988, which killed 243 passengers. Information on his eccentric leader and his personal lifestyle has also begun to surface. Gaddafi is often seen showing up on diplomatic missions, accompanied by his female bodyguards. The Amazonian Guards, as they're called, are Gaddafi's personal elite, all-female bodyguards who are reportedly handpicked by the Libyan leader and sworn virgins. Their skills include extensive martial arts training and flying fighter jets. Despite the failure to capture the Libyan leader alive, most people we spoke to do not seem concerned, as long as Gaddafi is no longer in power.
I think for some people it's put a lot of peace.
Well, everyone has the right to explain their reasons and for their actions, but if the people wanted him gone, then I guess that's what he got.
However, some people we spoke to questioned the real reason behind Gaddafi's death, suggesting that his plan to introduce the gold dinar a single African currency made from gold that would shift the balance of world power, it was a situation that US and NATO could not afford to let happen.
Well, to be honest, I don't think that's really it happened. I think it's like just made up by the media.
I think Gaddafi's death is not as it seems. I think it's more orchestrated by the NATO.
Libya's acting rulers have already announced the first 3 free elections within 8 months to elect a proper interim government ahead of a full presidential elections at a later date. Shibs, DHK News.
The Wall Street protests have continued this week, and further comparisons with the Boston Tea Party movement have been drawn, as the corporate greed of brokerage houses and trading outcry continues to fuel passionate and widespread demonstrations, which have prompted police forces to retaliate with the firing of rubber bullets. Our video journalist Raphael was in Washington D.C. and interviewed one of the key activists to help explain the major issues surrounding the protests.
There are a group of protesters outside the White House protesting that their food needs to have GMO labels, like genetically modified food labels. So that's what they're protesting outside the White House, and I think they're going around the square 2 times to show the demonstration. And there's like police around and cameraman, camera crew and all.
This is about, it's a lot of people that have gotten together in solidarity with the Occupy Wall Street movement. And we've come here because we all feel that the economic system as it's acting now is serving a very small part of the country. And we feel like the system was made by us, and we can remake the system. We can empower ourselves to change the system so that it again services the entire country. And we also feel that the economic system has too much, it has undue influence on the political system. We're starting a process which will be a long one of understanding what that change needs to be.
Here's sports news with Stelbovics.
Thank you, Ivan. And starting with AFL, and Greater Western Sydney have been rocked by the sudden departure of Chief Executive Dale Holmes following boardroom discussions over his future with the AFL club. The club released a statement saying that he had decided to resign. Thursday's exit by Holmes comes just a day after revelations the Giants had employed the father of star recruit and ex-Demon Tom Scully in a recruiting role. And in closing, it could be announced shortly that the NBA season will go ahead after all, as the players and owners get closer to reaching an agreement which could end the lockout of the 2011-2012 season. But fixtures may likely be shortened from the original 82-game season. And now it's time to congratulate DMHK News for 6 years on the air. So congratulations, Ivan and Anna. We have a little treat here at the back for you. Thank you very much, and many happy years ahead.
So, 6 years have passed.
Ah, that's right. 6 years is just amazing. Michael, look at that.
Happy birthday,
wow,
everyone.
Look at that. Thank you. It's just, wow, this, yes, just...
We'll do a 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1,
right. Yep. Hooray! Woo! Thanks everyone for supporting for the last 6 years, and we wish there will be more 6 years to come.
Just before we go, you can join our Facebook page by following the link below.
You're also welcome to join mine. Search Ivan Leung and click like. That's how the world looks tonight. Good night.
Good night.
You're going to cut this with me?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's cut the cake. Come on.